Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Casey. Today I'm going to be swatching for you 10 of my favorite eyeshadows from Looxi Beauty. Well, 10-ish. I created a video swatching all of my Looxi Beauty shadows back in February 2021, so a year and a half ago. I have been meaning to do an updated swatch video for you. However, my swatch videos are a little bit of work, and I currently have about 35 singles in my collection. So I thought to make things a bit easier on myself, as well as just to have a little bit more fun with this video, I would just start with my 10 favorites. If you've never heard of Looxi Beauty before, I recommend going back and watching my first swatch video. I shared a little bit more about the brand, who they are, and what they have to offer, but essentially Looxi Beauty is an indie makeup brand focusing primarily on eyeshadows. Their eyeshadows are only $3 a piece. These are the shadows I'm going to be swatching for you today. I know there's more than 10 shadows here. You know, I just couldn't decide. I couldn't narrow it down to 10. So for a few of these, I have a few other favorites that are fairly comparable, depending on what your makeup preferences are. Some of them have more sparkle, some are more metallic. We like options. We like options over here. If you've not seen one of my swatch videos before, I go row by row, swatching each shadow one at a time, and then I show you the complete row swatch under both studio lighting and natural lighting. Currently, as of today, all the shadows I'm going to be sharing with you in this video are still available. As always, I'll have timestamps in the description box below if there are specific shadows you're looking to see swatched. Otherwise, get ready to see some beautiful eyeshadows. I'm not swatching these in any particular order, however this first one I think is probably my very favorite. This is the shade Angel Wings. It's described as a light peachy orange that shifts to a multitude of colors from purple, blue, gold, and bronze. I find the formula of their shadows to be quite soft, which has its pros and cons. Cons because it can be sort of messy. However, I think that's good because a little goes a long way. You can put a little on your finger and dab it on for a little iridescence, a little shimmer, a little color, or you can really build up the intensity. On the viewfinder, I'm primarily seeing the gold, but in person here, I see all the colors. I see that blue, the purple, maybe even a little green, the bronze. The bronze and the purple sort of mixed together to make, it's not quite red or orange. Right in the middle, it's just a beautiful neutral multi-chrome. Such a great one if you're a neutral lover and you like sparkle and you just want something a little bit interesting on your lids. If you really like that wet, glossy eye look, this is a great one for that, one of my favorites. I use my finger with all of my Looxi shadows, and applying to the eyes, they glide over the lids so smoothly. However, because they're so smooth, they are buildable, but I think less is more. I've found a couple of times, especially if I'm experimenting and mixing and matching shadows, they start to look a little bit cakey on the lids. They might start creasing a little bit, so just be mindful of that, especially if you have mature lids or textured lids like myself. Next is the shade Gingerbread. It's described as a spicy pink with shifts of turquoise, purple, and red. That icy turquoise is really dominant in the viewfinder, but again in person here I'm seeing that spicy pink, which translates in my eyes as a peach, and some of that purple. The way that blue shifts with the peach base really makes the purple pop from certain angles. It's just such a mesmerizing transition from the warm to the cool tones. I think it's so eye-catching, so flattering on the eyes, especially if you have blue eyes. Next is another one of my tippy top faves. This is the Monarch. It's described as a bronze brown with shifts of rose and gold. This shadow is such a stunner as an all over the lid shadow. I actually have a backup of this one because back in December 2021, Looxi had announced they were going to be discontinuing all of their eyeshadows. So I was sure to pick up a backup because I didn't want to be without this beautiful shadow, and I already had a significant dip in the one I have. However, like I said in the intro, it is still available for sale. I don't feel like it's translating well in the viewfinder here. It looks pretty boring, quite honestly, for how much I'm hyping it up. Don't judge it until you see the swatches under natural lighting, trust me. The transition from that pinky rose gold to the warm bronze is just beautiful. It actually reminds me of the shade Dazzling from the ABH Nirvana palette. I talked about it in a previous video. I can link it below for you if you missed it, but it's one of my favorite chocolate browns in my collection. This one is similar to that, but amped up in the color shift in the sparkle. Next is the shade Rosé. It's described as a metallic champagne with shifts of a rosy pink. This one is quite similar to the first shadow, Angel Wings, but it's not as sparkly and it's not as neutral. For Angel Wings, I would draw some comparison to the ColourPop Super Shock in Ritz in the way it gives your eyes that neutral glossy finish. Rosé has a neutral pink base, and while it's not in the description, there is something icy about it. You can see it even in the viewfinder. It's almost like those first two shadows, Angel Wings and Gingerbread. If you combine them, it would be Rosé. You get that peachy pink base with that icy shift, but there's still a little bit of that champagne neutral undertone. The pink base isn't coming through as strongly in the viewfinder as it is in person. It looks exactly like a combination of Angel Wings and Gingerbread. Again, in comparing it to Angel Wings, I think Angel Wings has a touch more sparkle, whereas Rosé is more high shine and reflective in the finish. The last shadow for this row is Withered Rows. It's described as a smoky pink with slight purple undertones. I do recall swatching this one in my first Looxi swatch video, and I said then that it was one of my favorites, and it still is. I don't think I've said this yet, but the first four shadows all have a reflective, sparkly finish, whereas this one, Withered Rose, has more of a satin finish. There's no sparkle, and it's not quite as high shine. It's more of a sheen. Again, just like a satin shadow. I know it's not very exciting, especially compared to the first four shadows, but what can I say? I'm a neutral lover, and this is just a great day-to-day shadow. It's soft and romantic, yet there's this sultriness to it, a little bit smoky. As much as I love sparkle and color shifts, some days I want something simple, something sleek, something elegant, and this shadow is all of those things. This is the complete first row from left to right, elbow to wrist. We have Angel Wings, Gingerbread, the Monarch, Rosé, and Withered Rose. Moving on to the second row, shadow number 6 is the shade Hybrid. It's described as a brownish green with shifts of purple and turquoise. This type of shadow is one of my favorites. You know, like MAC's Starry Night, ColourPop's Glass Bowl, Urban Decay Lounge or Solstice. That warm red-brown base with that blue turquoise cool shift. Hybrid falls in that realm of duochrome type shadows. It's so captivating. It's a type of shadow that I love, just admiring my look when I'm done. I have a reel on my Instagram where I swatched all of my shadows like this in an attempt to dupe Urban Decay's Solstice. I'll put a link to it in the description box because the description for the post has all the shadow names. It was really quite interesting, you know, to a non-makeup lover, they would probably look at all the swatches and think they all look the same. But to me, it was so fun to see all the unique characteristics of the shadows. Even though on the eyes they create the same effect, they're all different in their own way. Hybrid was included as one of the shadows. Next is the shade Nirvana. It's described as a mauve brown with hints of turquoise green. This one is not unique by any means. I mean, I'm pretty sure most all eyeshadow brands have this shade within their collections, but I'm a sucker for grungy shadows, and paired with Looxi's smooth high shine finish, of course, this one had to be included in my favorites. I should do a video swatching all of my favorite grunge shadows. Ooh, especially with winter coming up, my favorite time of year to wear grungy, earthy shadows. Leave me a comment below if you'd be interested in that. I mean, I'll probably do it at some point, but if there's a lot of interest, perhaps I'll do it sooner rather than later. This one doesn't have any sparkle, it has more of a reflective finish. I imagine this shadow would be just beautiful on someone with green, hazel, or brown eyes. Next is the shade Reflection. It's described as a semi-metallic brown with shifts of green and gold. I have a story with this one. It's not an exciting story, but it's sort of how I discovered it was a favorite. I dropped my Looxi palette. The devastation that followed. Luckily, somehow, when I opened the palette, all of these shadows were fine except for this one. This one was completely broken. I tried to scoop it up and repress it, but it was too far gone. I was very sad, of course, but you know, with a larger collection, I was able to move on. But I found myself missing it a lot. So much so that I placed an order with Looxi specifically to repurchase this shadow. It's a perfect example of you don't know what you have till it's gone. Alongside Angel Wings and the Monarch, I would say this is one of my tippy top favorites. You know, it's not a super unique shadow, but I love the way this looks all over the lids. It's so beautiful. Another one that I just find myself admiring my eye look throughout the day. I love the way that dark brown remains along the edges of the shadow no matter what angle you're looking at it from. It gives it this smokiness. And then right in the middle, it's like a halo eye in a shadow because you get that contrasting green gold flip right in the center. Much like the previous shadow, there's no sparkle in the finish, just high shine reflection. Next is the shade Abracadabra. It's described as being magic in a pan. This unsuspecting silvery shade transforms and shifts to purple, blue, silver, and yellow gold. This is one of the shadows I have a few alternatives for, and what I think I'll do is I'll swatch this one as normal, and then on my other arm I'll swatch it alongside the comparisons. That way you can see them all together, and I'll still have room in my arm for the remaining shadows. This one is similar to Angel Wings in that it has a neutral leaning base with a sparkly finish, but this one has a stronger yellow gold in the base, so it's not quite as glassy on the lids. This one's going to have more of an opaque base. This one also has a stronger color shift to it. You can see along the edges the purple and the blue with a beautiful striking silver sheen that runs throughout the length. You see that? That is so cool. The first alternative I have for Abracadabra is the shade Snickerdoodle. It's described as a silvery green with shifts of blue, red, purple, turquoise, and gold. Here are swatch comparisons of Abracadabra and Snickerdoodle. Abracadabra is on the bottom, closest to my elbow, and Snickerdoodle is on top. It was so strange to swatch with my non-dominant hands, so don't judge me too harshly for the unevenness in these swatches. I tried my best. But as you can see, they're so similar. I really don't think you need both. The main difference I see, Snickerdoodle has warm red peeking through, which then contrasts and makes that blue flip a little bit stronger. But like Abracadabra, you get that silver sheen that remains constant throughout the entire swatch, both resulting in a cool toned, icier look. The last comparison for Abracadabra is the shade Supersonic. It's described as a silvery purple shade with shifts of red, green, and turquoise. I actually had just Supersonic in my list of 10 originally, but then I made the mistake of continuing to swatch all my shadows and decided to just pull in all three. I know in looking at them, Supersonic is clearly different, but there's similarity between the three. And like I said, depending on what your makeup preferences are, you might prefer one over the other. But Supersonic is the most unique, both of the three and of just being a shadow in general. I don't think I have any other shadow quite like Supersonic. The way I like wearing Supersonic is layering it over a matte warm brown shadow. The contrast is striking, it's so pretty. But because the blue is so much stronger in Supersonic, sometimes I don't want that strong of a blue, so I'll reach for one of the other two. And that's why I am comparing the three, because in the way that I wear them, it's similar. Depending on the final look I want, I have three different options of intensity for that blue iciness. You know what I'm saying? So looking at Supersonic just alone, not in comparison to the other two shadows, it's interesting because in the shadow description, it doesn't say blue. It says there is a shift of turquoise, but looking at it, swatch, you would think that blue is somewhere primarily in the base. I think it's the way that silvery purple base blends with that red shift, creates the illusion of such a strong blue presence. But again, Supersonic, much like the previous two, that constant silver sheen throughout the center really ties it all together, really provides that contrast, that high shine finish. The last shadow of my 10 is Pink Lemonade. It's described as being pink with shifts of gold and green. A few times I've worn it, I've used it as a halo eye or as a pop in my inner corner. The flip is just so interesting, it's so pretty, very ethereal. It's actually quite similar to the shade in the Huda Nude Light palette, that pastel pinky yellow gold shifting shadow, but I think this one's better. I wish I still had the Nude Light palette. I literally just decluttered it. The overall color story was just a touch too light for me. I kept it around for quite a while because of the interesting metallics, one of them being that pink to yellow duochrome, but justified decluttering it because I have this shadow. I'm just so impressed with this shift. Even under studio lighting, which I feel rarely does these shadows any justice. That's why I like including swatches under natural light. But look at that flip even here. As a tip, if you want more of that pink to shine through, apply this one wet. It really amps up the intensity, particularly that pink shift. This one has a touch of sparkle in the finish. It's very, very fine. Definitely not as sparkly as the previous shadow, Abracadabra, or the very first one in this set, Misfit. I think the finish is predominantly more of that reflective high shine. The alternative shadow I have for this one is the shade Venus. It's described as a soft yellow gold with shifts of pink, lilac, green, and caramel. I have Venus on the left and Pink Lemonade on the right. And looking at the two, I wouldn't immediately think they are similar. In looking at the pan Venus, I see more of that lilac color. It looks more cool toned, but in swatched, they're quite similar actually. Here they are swatched. On the bottom, I have Pink Lemonade, and on top is Venus. The comparison between these two is going to show up better in natural lighting, but you can see here they have quite similar shifts. You see that pink running through both, and they both have that yellow gold sheen. The biggest difference is Venus is much more sparkly. So depending on what look you're going for, you might want a more sparkly alternative, in which I'd recommend Venus. Or if you want something softer, I would go with Pink Lemonade. And again, much like Pink Lemonade, if you apply Venus wet, not only does it intensify the metallic and the sparkle finish, it also intensifies that pink. I just thought of another comparison. The shade Bubblegum, I know I swatched that one in my first Looxi swatch video. I do recall it being one of my favorites, but I don't really find I reach for Bubblegum anymore because I prefer the look of the other two. Here they are swatched. Again, from the bottom we have Pink Lemonade, Venus, and Bubblegum is on top. The times I've worn Bubblegum, I felt the green shift is a bit overpowering and comes off a bit harsh. The way the light hits it right in the center of my lid brings out more of that green flip. It's just not quite the look I'm going for. That's why I tend to reach for the other two shadows over Bubblegum. But hopefully it's helpful to have brought it in as a comparison because again, depending on what your makeup preferences are, maybe you want more of a stronger shift. So to conclude, Pink Lemonade is the softest of the three. The pink and the yellow gold diffuse together to create a softer color flip. And because there's no sparkle in the finish, the interest stays on the color flip. That is the interesting part of the shadow. Whereas Venus, you get that strong color flip, but because of that delicious sparkle, it's a show-stopping type shade that is going to dominate your look. And then Bubblegum, while it doesn't have as much sparkle, the color flips are much more vivid. The pink is much stronger, almost a Barbie pink, and then that sheen of green and gold sparkle that runs through it. All three are beautiful, but they are definitely going to create a very different finished look overall. Back to the original swatches, this is the complete second row. From left to right, elbow to wrist, we have the shade Misfit, Nirvana, Reflection, Abracadabra, and Pink Lemonade. That is going to conclude this video on my top 10 favorite Looxi Beauty eyeshadows. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was helpful. One thing that sort of irks me is that I feel Looxi's swatches on their website and on their Instagram page are somewhat deceiving. They're much more vivid. You see all of the color shifts in one swatch, and I just don't feel that's accurate in person. I am not meaning to speak poorly on the brand. I think the shadows are still beautiful, still unique and special. That's why I have a collection of them. It's just coming from a consumer's perspective, something that I noticed on my own even before doing YouTube. I just feel an extra push to swatch these shadows in particular in hopes that it helps you, because if you're going off the Looxi swatches alone, I think can be frustrating and can feel deceiving because they're just not true to photo. Leave me any comments, questions below. I'd also love to know what your favorite Looxi shadows are. I haven't ordered from them in a while and I'm kind of itching to now, especially after doing the swatch video, so let me know what your favorite Looxi Beauty shadows are.